This week's podcast is sponsored by Sevenoaks Sound and Vision. Sevenoaks are currently running a range of unmissable Black Friday and Cyber Monday deals. There's limited stocks, so grab a deal while you can by visiting ssav.com. Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 26th of November, and joining me on this edition are Steve Withers.
I'm not a recluse. I don't close my door to anybody. They just don't visit.
Ed Selley.
Hold still. I've never done this before and there will be blood.
And Mark Botwright.
The most detestable collection of people you will ever meet.
And welcome to the podcast. That's a nice intro there, Mark. Well done. Yeah, in it cold. Hasn't the weather changed recently? I know I live up north and it's always bloody cold, but actually up north, I've had the heating on most of this week. I mean, I'm looking at my smart meter. I'm spending about £5 a day at the minute on energy, just to keep this place warm. Ed, you'll be worse because you'll be looking at your meter just disappearing.
It's grim.
50p is going in like...
Well, thankfully it's on £10 cards these days, so
£10 cards going in.
It's a bit more sophisticated, but yeah. Essentially, the thing I've had to do is accept that heating the whole gaff is absolutely pointless. So I'm now like, those old people you see in the charity adverts. I essentially just heat the room I'm in, and I've given up with the kitchen altogether.
Can we take this opportunity to do a little charity commercial? For just £2 a month, you can help a vinyl enthusiast heat his home.
Do you know what? I actually yesterday morning, because I don't know what was last night here was warmer than the night before. So we're recording on the Friday. So Wednesday night was just unbelievable. On Wednesday morning, I came in to the room I work in during the day, and the bearing oil in my turntable was actually viscous. That's how cold it was. Which I believe its viscosity point is as near as makes no difference freezing. So yeah, it was chilly in here, but I have made a few adjustments. I've got one of those oil-filled heater things, which are slightly more efficient than the wall-mounted electric heaters, and that's close to my feet as well, because as an old person I get cold feet and it's very pleasant. So I'm muddling through the only way I know how, but thank you for your concern.
Yeah, Mark, what have you been up to? More hat making?
Yeah, yes, I have. Unfortunately, I've got onto the stage where you have to actually start sewing things, which I'm painfully slow at. So I think I'm going to have to be that person who says, "Miss, can I take mine home with me to finish it?"
Do you have to hand stitch? I'm assuming it can't be done in the machine.
Yeah,
because of the nature of the way it curves and stuff.
Yeah, it's all hand stitching because you're going through felt. It's ridiculously tough as well. So yeah. Not great. And other than that, I've been in horrible pain from a wisdom tooth coming through. So
Is that still not sorted?
No. I've got an appointment in January. So it's more than looking forward to Christmas. I'm looking forward to January and getting my face cut open and this thing ripped out.
Can we look to you for some exciting turkey smoothie recipes over the festive period?
It has got to that stage now where I'm just, what do I want for lunch? I'll have soup again.
Obviously, I've not got the same kitchen resources that I used to have through self-inflicted changes. But I will. If you're getting bored of soup, I've got a few that I've been experimenting with, which I'll ping on some details for if you're feeling creative.
No, I could always do with more soup recipes.
Take that, because he wouldn't send any to me. Because he said, I'll just make it up as I go along. When asked.
Well, I do just make it up as I go along, but I can try and write it down as I make it up and report back. But I can't give you exact quantities because I don't do exact quantities. It really depends on how biblical a quantity you want to make it.
I made a mistake of that because I made a potato and leek the other day, soup, and I thought I'll be a bit adventurous and add a little bit of chilli. And obviously I did a little bit too much chilli because it blew my bloody head off. I couldn't taste the potato and leek.
The problem is that they're obviously with chilies, they're all
chilies are very tricky because you never know what strength the chili is until you start using it.
You can have two identical looking Scotch roulette, and one you could probably eat with some levels of discomfort just by putting it in your mouth. The other one, if you tried that, you go to hospital. So it's all very variable. If you're in any doubt, just start using the dried essence because that's very consistent.
Okay, there you go. Steve, what you been up to? Secret squirreling and stuff, have you?
Well, while I wasn't around last week, you mean?
Yeah, I take it you were on a spying mission somewhere.
Yes, I was North Korea, so that was tricky. No, I was in Korea, the southern bit. I should point out.
Did you surf to the shore on an enormous CGI wave?
Yeah, no, I was on a trip to Korea with Samsung, having a sneaky look at what's coming next year.
Was it
Which
all
I can't tell you
kimchi-tastic?
about because it's all under NDA. So that'll be it, really. What you say? Sorry, Ed.
Did you have you eaten plenty of kimchi?
Indeed, lots of kimchi.
Good.
And
Nice girl, is
and a
she?
lot of barbecue.
Is it still Ob beer that's their go-to?
No, it was Kaza or something like that. I think it was.
I've got to say, I really enjoy dried Korean food. Whereas Japanese, I don't like.
But you're not a massive fish fan, are you?
No, I'm not a massive.
Japanese
But
food.
the Korean side, when I was over there in Seoul, I really enjoyed. I enjoyed everything, especially the barbecue.
I done
Barbecue's
enough
really
though,
nice.
barbecue, because it was barbecue every night, pretty much.
Was it?
And,
Oh, right, okay.
yeah, and by the end of it, I was like,
Is it Korean restaurants where they have like the little cooker at the table as well?
Yeah. You have the
yeah,
barbecue
that's
in the
the
table.
barbecue, yeah. So they got like a hot plate, and they cook all the meat, and you just chomp away. Yeah, it was lovely. It was a nice trip. I enjoyed it. It was surprisingly warm, considering it's November. It was 15, 20 degrees, sunshine. It was really hot during the day, which is unusual for the time of year.
Yeah.
Unlike here, as you've already pointed out.
Yeah. Well, this last week I was down in London for the Philips thing. So all I wanted to say for that is there's loads of information on the website. You want to know what that was, have a look. But thanks to everybody that came up and spoke and said how much they enjoyed the podcast and what we do at AVForums and that kind of thing. It's always nice for people when people come up to you and feedback and give you genuinely nice things about you. It's really quite heartwarming. So thanks very much for that. And I'm now passing it on to the rest of the team. The rest of the team, you are appreciated, believe it or not.
Wow.
Thank you.
I too was in London at that point, but I just went to see my brother. It was nice and quiet and civilised.
I've got to say, it was unseasonably warm that day in London. It was really strange. I was walking about short sleeved shirt, and I was down Downing Street as she was panicking. Westminster, parts of Westminster, all covered up at the minute, which is a bit strange. So didn't get any good
They
photos.
tried to disguise it or something.
It's in a very poor state. Well, it's been in a very poor state of repair for about 75 years, and it's now reached the point where we either spend a truly biblical sum putting it back together, or it will fall down or poison somebody in the not too distant future. So I think we've sort of finally had the issue
I
for.
think if you I'd like to see you get poisoned by it, to be honest. This
is a fair point, but you tend to find that it's a bit variable about who actually, you might find that one of the very few sort of, reasonable members of parliament, or actually just someone who works for them who is not in themselves a cretin, suffers. So, it's a bit variable.
Yeah, it is strange because it is a historic building, but it's probably the only historic building that gets used daily. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Because if you think other historic buildings that are around about the same age, they don't get used as much, do they? So they can preserve them a damn sight better than they can with. I remember watching a documentary and even just getting the latest technology in. Running cables for internet connections and all that kind of thing, and you're talking about buildings that are crumbling away.
Yeah.
You drill in a wall and it just crumbles. So yeah. Anyway, so that's what we've all been up to. So what can we win competition wise, Mark?
Okie dokes, you can win Skyscraper on Blu-ray, and that one closes on 27th of November. You can also win Rambo Collection and Cliffhanger on 4K Blu-ray, and that one closes on 28th of November. You can also win one of 3 Jar Aeroball Nano Bluetooth speakers, and that competition closes on 4th of December. And we've also got a behind-the-scenes tour of ITV News, and that competition closes on 10th of December.
That's properly cool. Where did that pop up from?
It just appeared on the competition page, Ed.
Yeah.
That's I don't, I'm not being paid to say this. That's cool. I mean, at the moment, my need for physical video media is pretty limited, but biffing around the set of ITV News, I'm up for that.
Yeah, it's basically one of our members is one of the works on ITV News.
He hasn't cleared it with anyone.
At quite senior level, so he just
smuggled in under a coat.
Yeah. So good competitions there. Just another bit of housekeeping before we go on to hardware news is that there are only 4 podcasts left till Christmas, and then
you should make it more interesting, Phil. There are only 4 podcasts left, and just leave it at that. That's what everyone says.
Yeah.
Test waters.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, but you're going to be left with a big dark hole over the Christmas period where you are going to have to mingle with family members and talk to real people, because we won't be around, unfortunately. But we will be back on straight after CES, won't we, Steve? Myself and you will be doing a podcast which will basically be talking about everything that happens in CES, and obviously the week before that is CES week, so there'll be loads of stuff on the website, and that kicks off round about the 6th of January onwards, and then we're back again with the podcast. But there's only 4 more, so prepare yourself, people. You're going to have a long Christmas ahead with no AV forums to listen to.
Oh, we're going to do a drinking podcast. It's the last one.
We'll do that on the 14th.
Every podcast is a drinking podcast at my end.
Yeah, I'm sure some listeners even have their own drinking games with certain phrases that keep getting repeated over and over and over.
Yeah, it's abundantly clear that I'm a repetitive dick. So
Is it you? I thought it was me.
I think we all have our tells, but I understand that I'm particularly bad.
Okay, well, I mean, Steve does the most talking, so obviously he's going to have the most repeats.
It would appear that if you took a drink every time I uttered the phrase "for me," you would be legless most podcasts by the side of an hour. So there you go.
Okay, well, the last podcast we will all bring our games and stuff in and have a free day, casual wear.
Yeah, I've got Star Wars.
I can assure you that I'm currently in my casual wear. Pants, socks, and pajamas count.
Hell, I shaved this morning for the podcast.
Wow, sorry, I was probably a bit over.
For the last time, we're not doing it on video.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So before we go on, previous winners, Mark.
Yep. Chris Gal won Sicario 2 Soldado on 4K Blu-ray. Rulo Cal won Rushmore on Blu-ray.
I believe that's Are You Local?
Yeah. I must admit, I read it as Ruler Cal.
All right. Are You Local won Rushmore on Blu-ray. Sede 2012.
This is a bastard set of usernames, isn't it?
He won Shampoo, or she won Shampoo on Blu-ray. Kinect 595 won Jackie Chan's Project A and Project A Part 2 on Blu-ray, and No Solo Inglese won the Philips 65-inch 803 OLED TV.
Oh, well done.
Cracking prize.
Oh, well done there. That is a prize worth winning. Sorry, everybody else, you all got the crap. That's the prize you wanted.
That's a proper prize.
Yeah. Where did that come from? Right, hardware news is next. Hardware news. Now, I was going to talk about the Sony VW570 4K projector and give my final thoughts, but the review's going to be up this week while you listen to the podcast, so go and read the review.
It's pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah. Very, very good projector. Everything I said in the previous podcast held true. So if you listen to the previous podcast, you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, read the review. The review is up there, because what I am going to talk about is a bit of a mystery, and that's the Sony ZF9 TV. I've had it in for review. Now, it turned up just before the Philips thing last week, but I didn't have any chance to look at it. I basically set it up and I've let it run in a little bit. But this week I have been spending time with it, and I've had it side by side with the LG C8. I mean, literally side by side, running them together. And to be honest with you, it's a bit of a mixed bag, this TV, because the ZD9, Steve, which is the one that you looked at.
Yeah.
And I saw it here and there. I didn't spend any major time with it, but it was actually quite a groundbreaking TV when it came to market. It was doing things a little bit differently in terms of local dimming backlights and all the rest of it, and it actually was a really good performer.
It was a definite step up in terms of performance. Over 600 local dimming zones, which at the time I think was the most anyone had done, and really bright, really good HDR performance, minimal blooming. It was a really good LED LCD TV, and kind of set the bar. And I think it stands up to this day, because it used the extreme process. It was the first TV to have that, which meant it could also have the Dolby Vision update. It was definitely a cracking TV at the time, and it remains a very good TV even now. So there was a lot of expectation, I guess, with the ZF9 that would carry on that performance and take it to the next level. Yeah. Did it?
Well, it's part of the Master Series. So there's two TVs in the Master Series. There's the AF9, which I reviewed recently, and a cracking OLED TV it is. Yeah. Fantastic. This is a really mixed bag. because the first few days I had it running, and then I spoke to you actually while I had it running in the first few days. I was really quite impressed with it. Just looking at normal TV viewing, this is in daylight, so I hadn't done any darkroom viewing at that point. This was all in the living room with daylight and so on. And the viewing angles are fantastic, which brings me to the mystery. I am convinced that this is an IPS panel that's in here, or some kind of panel that has the attributes of IPS and has been developed. Now, I have asked the question of Sony.
I asked the question when we were at IFA, and then they gave me a straight answer.
Yeah. So the email has gone in because there's a few things that I want you to query with them, and they've acknowledged the email, but yet to come back with anything. But
given that Sony won't even tell you how many local dimming zones there are,
I have asked that question as well.
Did you count them?
Well, I've gotten three different results.
What's the average of the three?
Not very high. I'm going to say
it's definitely not 600, is it? It's a lot lower than.
No, it is a lot. It's closer to 100 at the minute. So again, this is why I've asked the question.
Which is disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You think, well, if you set the bar at a certain level, you expect them, the Master Series flagship LCD television, you expect them to at least meet the same bar, if not jump above it.
I mean, the other reason why I am assuming that this is an IPS panel rather than the VA panel is the contrast. The contrast is not good at all.
What's the black level measurement?
So I haven't done the final checks. I've done some black level measurements. I want to double check things. I want to go through and spend a bit more time. Because I'm finding these issues, I think it's only fair that I spend a little bit extra time and actually go through each one by one and try and get to the bottom of what's actually going on. Because the thing is, it has a local dimming system, Steve. If you switch it off, the set is just it's a mess. It's a clouded mess. Absolutely clouded mess. If you put it on low, it's less of a clouded mess. It's only when you put it on medium and high that you actually get black. Blacks actually look black, and there's a little bit of contrast in the image. What you're looking at is shadow detail. Yeah, there's loads of shadow detail because the blacks aren't really black. They're really quite milky.
Which makes you think IPS again, doesn't it?
Exactly, because you're getting loads of shadow detail there, but it's really milky. There's not a great deal of contrast. I mean, when you put it side by side with the C8, with SDR content and then with HDR content, with SDR there really is a difference there in terms of the black levels, which you would expect because OLED, that is the strong point. But there is this milkiness, there is this lack of contrast. If it's a tricky scene, like a dark scene with some light in it, haloing around objects is really quite noticeable as well, which obviously points to less zones in the backlight and so on. And I'm talking about things like where you wouldn't normally expect to see haloing. So a newsreader last night on the 6 o'clock news was holding a white bit of paper in her hand, and there was haloing around this white bit of paper. It's that obvious, and of course the lack of the contrast, it enhances that. It brings it to the fore, so you notice it even more. With HDR, it really is a mixed bag as well, because when it does it right, it's stunning. I mean, it blows the C8 away. That's sitting next to it when the highlights are right. A scene that I'll to give a good example of that is in Pan, which is a well-used demo disc that we use in all our reviews. The scene where Hook and Tinkerbell are standing on the edge of the cliff and they're talking, and there's the sun behind them, and it's a nice orange hue to it, and you should actually be able to see the circular sun. It shouldn't be blown out or anything. So both the C8 and the ZF9 do that scene really well in terms of tone mapping it properly, but it's so bright on the Sony. It is stunningly bright. It is really impactful. So that scene really impacts. But then it immediately cuts to a scene where she's walking through the woods, and then they're about to get attacked.
And they're in the shadows. And stuff.
In the shadows, and it's and straight from there into the rest of the scene, the C8 wins it every time for brightness, for black depth, for shadow detail, for contrast, for dynamic range, because the Sony just has no contrast, which to me points it has to be either be an IPS panel or it's some development of that technology that Sony are not telling us about. So it is a bit of a mixed bag.
I saw it last week, and I've got to say it was the first time I'd seen it since IFA, and a completely dark room. And I wasn't impressed.
No, so
I have to say, I was not impressed.
This is the next bit I'm coming on to. So yeah, Pan, it's a letterbox, as is Blade Runner 2049. They're shot in scope, so you get your black bars top and bottom. They're not black. at the top and bottom. They are if there's nothing bright next to the edges of the image, but as soon as you get any brightness next to the edges of the image, or you watch something like Gravity with the white spacesuits against the black background, fantastic. It brings out all the stars. It doesn't crush any detail because there's no contrast there, and the local dimming's not strong enough to be overly aggressive with it. So you're actually getting a bit more than you are on OLED, because OLED's got super black level.
Yeah.
And
you get a little bit of crush in the stars, don't you?
You're getting a little bit of crush and stuff, which you put up with for the dynamic range. Whereas the Sony, there's none of that. But then there's no contrast there either. And as soon as any bright images get close to the letterbox on 235 material, the likes of Pan or other stuff that I've been watching, like Blade Runner and so on, it lights up the black bars. And the black bars light up in columns if it's a column of light, or if it's
that's surprising for a direct LED TV,
it is,
isn't it?
So distracting. And the thing is, the strong points, where it gets it right with the brightness. I mean, this measures 1250 nits peak on a 10%. It's a bit strange, because when you start the measurement, it measures 900 and then it rises within 10 seconds up to 1250. When I was doing my measurements in HDR,
within 10 seconds?
Within 10 seconds, it brightens up.
So that's not really represented then, is it? Because it would be immediate, shouldn't it? If you're cutting to a scene, suddenly it's bright, then it...
Hang on, let me explain this. Because when I was doing the PQE or TF measurements, so the grayscale measurements, if I started with a black screen and then started the measurements running, so for people that are not familiar with how Goldman works, once you finish a set of runs, it puts it into a black screen. It's not pure black, but it is dark, so you're not leaving anything on the screen that's going to retain or whatever. That's how Goldman works. And then when you click to measure, it goes to 100% white, and then it goes to complete black, and then it works up the grayscale from there and does the measurements quite quickly. If I started from a black background like that, Steve, the measurement at 100% was 600 nits. If I went into that with a full white screen, and I left the full white screen on for a few seconds, then started my measurements, it was 1250 nits.
Weird.
So the tone mapping was all over the place, depending on how you were measuring it and what was on screen before you started your measures, which was a bit weird.
Have you tried it with any Dolby Vision stuff yet?
So I did some side by side. So I mean, obviously the C8 and the ZF9 are Dolby Vision capable. The thing is, the splitter I have, it does HDR10, it doesn't do Dolby Vision, so I can't put it through the splitter. But what I did was I had the C8 running its Netflix app in Dolby Vision, and I basically tried to get them running at the same time. They were about a few frames out, but I got them running at the same time. I have to say, it is far improved over the AF9. I don't know if there's been an update while I was switching the TVs over or whatever, but certainly it looked a bit better with the inbuilt Netflix app playing Dolby Vision. So again, it didn't have the same posterization effects that I was seeing on the F9 in the low reaches. Now, it could just be that's how it's implemented on the OLED to do the tone mapping and so on. It has got the calibrated by Netflix thing, and again, the same as the AF9, what it does is it puts it basically into the best settings out of the box. So, well, myself and you might think, oh well, that's not doing much. For a normal user, if it's getting a normal user to click that and they're watching it in the best settings, then it's a great feature as far as I'm concerned, because it's getting people into the right modes. But yeah, I mean, a real mixed bag of a TV. And like I say, I mean, I'm not making my final verdict at the minute, because I want to see what Sony come back with. I have asked the questions, I've sent it direct to them and said, look, I am reviewing this TV at the minute, let's see what they come back with. I have no doubt they won't tell me anything. Because that seems to be the way. But we'll try.
Lucky we get them to confirm it's a TV. They're terrible for actually just really obvious questions, and they just won't answer them.
Yeah, well, but we'll see.
Have you tried the AutoCal on either this or the AF9 yet?
No, because they're still in beta, and I haven't bothered with that at the minute. Because the way I'm looking at it, there's only professional calibrators are going to offer the service. Users can't use it, so it's pointless to a user unless they are going to get their TV calibrated. And then I expect professional calibrators to know what they're doing with it. I don't really see the worth of covering a whole section of a review about something that some people might do or might not do. But no, out of my own personal curiosity, I haven't done it yet. Haven't had an opportunity to do it yet. I've been so busy and just trying to churn everything out the door as it is. But it's a real mixed bag, this TV. And the thing is, what it does well, it does really well, but there are just too many flaws in there for me at the moment. But I'm going to give Sony the opportunity to come back. I've asked them the questions. We'll see what they say before I publish my final thoughts on the TV. At the minute, I couldn't live with it because it's too distracting watching letterbox stuff with the local dimming and so on, and I'll watch a lot of stuff in 235. The HDR side of things, when it does it right, like that scene in Pan, and like bright scenes like that where it's tone mapping properly, and so on, then it does look stunning. But again, I find this brightening issue as well. If I pause, the scene with the ship flying in towards Neverland and there's the sun behind the clouds,
it goes through the tunnel,
and before it goes through the tunnel, I paused it there, and it was tone mapping the sun properly because you could see the sun basically. You could see the circle, and within 10 seconds it had blown it out.
Oh, right.
So there's some kind
sounds like the tone mapping is up there.
There's some kind of algorithm within the tone mapping there that if it's on screen for a few seconds, like and you're getting a few cuts and that kind of thing, then it works. Like that scene on the cliff with Hook and Tinkerbell talking and the sun behind them, because the sun's not there all the time. It's just in certain shots while they're having this conversation. So it was fine. If you watch that scene with the ship flying in,
it's a continuous shot, isn't it?
It's a continuous shot. If you watch it in, it's fine. But as soon as you pause it, with any bright specular highlights on screen, it then blows them out. It does the same with a ramp pattern. So from the Meridio, if I set it HDR, if I set it at 4000 nits or 1000 nits, on the ramp, as soon as you put the ramp up, you can see all the bars, and then suddenly the bars disappear as it brightens up. Yeah, it is a bit weird. So obviously I've asked the question as well to Sony on that one as well. So yeah, bit of a mixed bag, bit of a disappointment so far.
Particularly coming off the back of the ZD9, which was such a good TV.
Yeah, and the AF9 is an absolutely fantastic OLED TV. I mean, it's really, really good. This has...
You get the feeling sometimes that certain manufacturers, and I'm thinking of Sony and LG to a certain extent, their heart's not really in LCD anymore. There's the priorities.
There's definitely been some cost cutting on this one. Definitely. I mean,
how much is it actually? That's a good question. Is it how is it competitively priced or?
Yeah, if I have a quick look around, you can get it in the 65, which is the one that I'm reviewing, or the 75 inch. 75 inch is $5,000. The 65 is about 2,800 at the moment. So it's not cheap.
To put that into perspective.
It's
65 C8 would cost you less, 2,299 quid.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'd be going with the C8
every time.
but let me just clarify that, because I don't want to sound like an OLED fanboy. But that technology suits me. It suits my viewing. It suits what I'm looking for in a TV personally. So if it was my money, that's what I'd be paying. And that's what I'd be buying. As a reviewer and being unbiased and fair across all the technologies, I'd still buy the C8, just given the performance level.
If I was going to buy an LCD TV, I'd get the Q9. 2,399 quid, job done.
Yeah, and gaming side, I haven't checked the gaming side yet. That's an area where I shall do some gaming over the weekend while I'm getting final thoughts, and I'm hoping that Sony will come back today with some of these answers, if not hopefully Monday, so I can get the review finished and get the review up. But yeah, it is a bit of a mixed bag, and it's doing some strange things that I wasn't expecting it to do in HDR and so on as well. So when it gets it right, it's fantastic. But it gets it more wrong on more occasions than it gets it right. And just in terms of colour as well, I was surprised it didn't cover the whole of DCI-P3. So again, it didn't measure the full, and the measurements were XY 92% and UV 96% of DCI, and the tracking was slightly off as well. So again, it wasn't as good as the AF9. It's one of these, used in a bright room as well, where you think it'd be a strength. You can still notice the lack of contrast in mixed scenes as well. So yeah, it's the panel that has me stumped at the minute. So I'm hoping that they might come back with some idea of what the panel is.
I remember at IFA, because you thought, the viewing angles are much improved over previous VA panels, and my immediate thought, and not just me, everyone was immediately like, was this an IPS panel? And they didn't answer the question. So
yeah.
See what they say to your email.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
my first thought was is this an IPS panel?
It's same here. As soon as I set it up and I have it at such an angle in the room at the minute that I actually walked off to the kitchen and came back again. As I was coming back through, I'm thinking, oh wow, that's really quite good. And it is. The viewing angles really are quite nice. But I'm a bit confused with the Master Series. It's part of the Master Series, and again, it didn't measure well out of the box. Grayscale wise, it was very bluish cyan in terms of results. With delta E's were up between 8 and 10 in the brighter sections. It's
interesting. Everything you've just said, and I'll talk about this in more depth in a later podcast, but everything you've just said pretty much mirrors my experiences with the LG SK9500.
Right, yeah. Okay, and that's an IPS panel.
That is definitely an IPS panel, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's interesting. So let's see what Sony say on that one. The review will be up, and I'm not going to make any final judgments on it. That's where I am in terms of the testing at the minute. And I thought it was interesting enough to bring up in the podcast this week rather than talk about the projector where you can go to the review and so on. So yeah, I'm glad you approve of that, Steve. Right. Let's move to you then. You've been looking at some Arcam kit. You're a bit of an Arcam fanboy these days.
I'd be the first to admit it. They make some fantastic products. I had the AVR390 in for review, which is I guess you'd call it the entry level AV receiver from their FMJ range for Metal Jacket.
All things are relative.
Yeah, I was about to say, relatively speaking, it's their entry level product, but it's $2,000, so it's not it's not an entry level price. But when you consider what you're getting, I would say actually it's very, very good value, because if you compare the AVR390 to the flagship AVR850 in terms of the specifications, one's £2,000 and one's £4,500. Now the 390 does not have the Class G amplification; it's just Class AB. So that's the only difference. Otherwise, they are identical. So if you're looking to get yourself a really, really good AVR with possibly with potential for upgrade later, because you can always, of course, add power amps later to boost the amplification if you want to beef it up a bit, but you're getting everything else. So you're getting the really fantastic processing for Dolby Atmos and for DTS:X. You're getting the full Dirac Live suite for room correction. You're getting all that stuff. The only difference is the amplification. So a lot of people I know, a lot of installers are actually buying 390s and using them as pre-pros. And just plugging them into the some power amps and using them that way. Yeah. And so when you start to look at it as you think, well, £2,000, it's not an unreasonable amount of cash, but for what you're getting, I think it's really good value. If you look at it, anyone who's seen read my AVR850 review, it's identical, the same build quality, exactly the same big center dial, that green LED display. It's a fairly minimalist utilitarian design, but it's well made. Around the back, you got 7 HDMI inputs and 3 HDMI outputs. 2 HDMI outputs. So plenty there. They're HDMI 2.0A, so you got Dolby Vision support, wide color gamut, all that stuff. 7 channels built in. So this is the big catch with this one. With all their AVRs, should I say, because they're all 7-channel amplifiers, which means if you want to run anything more than 5.1.2, you are going to have to buy additional amplification. But it can process and run a full 11.2 system, assuming you add the additional amplification.
You see, as far as I'm concerned, that's the right. Yeah, I'm going to stick my neck out. I think that's the right way of doing it. If you're building in, it all costs to build in those extra amplifiers. And you've looked at that flagship Denon unit. It's extremely impressive, but I'd still be interested to know just how many of them go into situations where all of those channels are bolted in and running.
True. No, I don't disagree, Ed. I think this is probably the right approach. Particularly when you're talking about a higher end product, it's about sound quality. So in terms of features, it has a reasonable set of features, but clearly comparing it to say a Denon, there's way more features on Denon. But I would question how many of those features I actually use. Very few. Really, if your main priority is a really, really good sounding AVR, with the stuff you need. So if you look at the back panel, they've chucked away all the legacy crap no one's ever going to need. It's all HDMI these days. You've got your HDMI inputs, you've got your HDMI outputs, you've got 11.2, so you can run 2 subs if you want, pre-outs, so that's excellent. There's no there's no 7.2 inputs on it, or 7.1 inputs, should I say, on it, so you can't use it, plug in, say, an older DVD or Blu-ray player that has analog outputs. But I question how many people are doing that these days. I think everyone is using HDMI. So you've got the right connections. It's been simplified. You've got 7 channels in there. You plug it in, you're good to go. You can run 7.1 or 7.2. If you want to have overhead channels, you can go 5.2, 5.1.2 or 5.2.2 and for a start. And if you really want to add more to it, as you say, Ed, then you have the option, get some more amplification in, and you can go the full 7.2.4 if you want to. That's the option. But what you're getting is a really, really good AVR to start with. It sounds fantastic. Really excellent processing, and you got Dirac Live, which does a fantastic job. And there's a new version coming too quite soon.
We see that'd be the appeal for me, and I'm guessing that the amplification that is in the 390, it's of a fairly high standard.
Yeah, I mean it's not Class G like the 850, but it's still bloody good. I mean it's better than because you're not trying to cram in 11 channels or something into it. Yeah, you've got 7 channels of Class AB, and it sounds good, and it can drive, even really sensitive speakers. So, I think, again, like I said, $2,000 might sound like a lot of money, but I think for what you're getting for that $2,000, I think it's bloody good value, really good value, because you're getting a a really classy piece of kit, and with options to upgrade later if you needed to. So for me, it kind of makes sense, it does sound bloody good too. It is a really, really good. I mean, yes, the 850 is better, but the 850 is twice as much, more than twice as much. So it's all relative, isn't it? But I mean, if you're looking to get into a really class piece of Arcam kit and get the features like Dirac Live, which can make a huge difference. We're talking about Room EQ. It can make a huge difference to the performance. I think. I really love Dirac. I think it works brilliantly. So. Yeah, definitely. If you're in the $2,000 price bracket and you're looking at thinking, well, do I go for the bells and whistles Denon, or do I go for something not quite as flashy, but gets the job done brilliantly and delivers the key aspects of a performance? Then I'd definitely be pushing I'd get going for the Arcam.
How is it in terms of software support and stability and so on? Because in the past, Arcam have had issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is a very fair comment. I've got to say, I mean, I use an 850 in my reference system. I've never had a single problem with it. It's been absolutely rock solid.
Okay.
Rock solid in terms of performance. No issues, no bugs, no dropouts, no software problems, nothing. None of the things that happened in the previous generation. This time round, it's a rock solid platform. I would not worry about that. That definitely has been the case in the past with Arcam kit, but I think that's definitely a thing in the past.
It's fair to say that Arcam's new owners are not terribly tolerant of whimsical. They if there was ever a point where a company was taken over and you think, do you know what, that could work quite well for all parties, this was a fine example of that. If you look across the wider Harman group, even ignoring now the Samsung connection, if you just look across the wider Harman group, this is not a company. If they say it does it, it generally does it out the box. It generally does it exactly as they say it's going to do it. And that I'm from my perspective, that's great. It's exactly what is needed with a product this complex and at this relatively premium price point.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be the advice that we used to give on a regular basis, Steve, was that if you're going to build yourself a home cinema system or even a hi-fi system, think 5 years ahead. Have a 5-year plan. Don't buy everything all in one go.
What would Joseph Stalin do? Sorry.
Anyway, that was always the advice, wasn't it, in the past? Buy each component and buy the best component you can buy at the time for each point of the system. And I guess this is what Arcam are doing. They're saying, look, you can have the 390 and build it over time, or you can go and get the 850 and it's all there in one go.
Well, even with the 850, you still have to add additional amplification.
Oh, yeah, so you do, don't you? Yeah.
But yes, because it's still only 7 channels. But basically, what they're saying is, and what I would be saying is, if you've got the money and you can afford $4,500, the 850 is absolutely superb. It sounds amazing. Probably the best AVR you can buy right now. In fact, it is the best AVR you can buy right now. However, if you don't have $4,500, but you've got $2,000, you are going to be very happy with the 390, and you're going to still get a fantastic sounding, brilliantly performing AVR that delivers the goods sonically, and has what you need. Maybe not well, like I say, all the flashy features of some of the other AVRs you could buy, but it has what you need. And like you say, you've always got the option to upgrade later with. Say, one thing you can't do, I should point out, is unlike say a Denon or a Marantz, what you can't do is mix and match which channels you upgrade. So you can't say allocate, get a power amp and use that to drive front, left, and right, and then use the internal amplification to drive the other 7 channels. They're all each channel is allocated to a specific channel, and that's it. You can't change that. So what you would need to do basically is you could either add 4 channels of amplification for overhead and do 7.2.4, or like I said, some people are using them as basically pre-pros and just using all 11 channels going out to power amps. But what you can't do is mix and match the internal amplification to different channels, which is unfortunate. Which you can do on, say, a Denon, for example.
Yeah.
But even so, I think it's absolutely stellar performer, and personally, I think it's really good value. I know £2,000's a lot of money, but I think it's good value.
No, it sounds really quite appealing, Steve. If I was in the market, it's definitely something I would be looking at. And the other thing you mentioned, adding in amplification. One thing I have noticed recently, and it certainly brought it to my attention because I got sent an Iota VX 7-channel amp in for a review, and when I got that sent through, it was £900. I think it's gone up to about £1,000 now, thanks to Brexit. But I was really quite surprised with what you get for your money these days in terms of power amps.
It's really good, actually, that power amp.
Yeah, because I know you've had a look at one as well.
Yeah, I've had a look at one, and yeah, exactly. That's £1,000. You put that with the 390, you've got yourself a bloody good system.
Yeah, no,
really, really good.
Yeah, so I see the value in that, and I see the value in adding extra amp, because then you have your choice as well, and you never go wrong with a power amplifier, really. As long as you do your homework and so on, and like I say, that the quality you're getting for £1,000 these days, absolutely stonking value. So. Right, okay, so we've been talking about audio there, so Ed's now going to give us a lowdown on all the different audio formats and what they mean. On you go, Ed.
Well, I'm not going to read them out, but Phil asked if I could do what was supposed to be a short, quick win on what the format's in use, and unfortunately, because I'm an obsessive compulsive, it turned into a bit of a longer list of what I think is every audio format in common or uncommon use as of the time of writing, November 2018. At the moment, it's sat on our content management system, which we as contributors stick on. I don't know what's been done to it since I left it there, because I sort of left it without pictures. It's like, I don't know what you want to do with this, so I just left it with Phil and then invoiced him, and he very kindly paid. But yes, it is an alphabetical list of all of the formats, and what I've tried to do is cover off the annoying habit that we have in this industry. It's the same with so many other specialist things, where you end up using very specific terminology for things that actually are much, much simpler when you don't use the very specific terminology. So I have tried to cover off that. I've even tried to explain how DSD works without using the phrase magic, because that's, broadly speaking,
I'm curious to read that bit then.
It's one of those things. To simplify, DSD shouldn't work. As by any calculation of I can tell you how it goes about it, but I do not understand how that results in a meaningfully useful audio signal. But that's by the by. Some clever gentlemen at Sony and Philips did that for me. So we've covered off that, and it was exciting because I thought, we'll do some legacy things. So there's things like A-Track in there as well, which is of the Sony compression format that was predominantly used in minidisc. But I found, to my astonishment, there is a device in common use which still makes heavy use of A-Track for some of its functions. Any ideas what it is? Mr. Botwright might know. I think Mr. Botwright owns one. Oh, he's buggered off. Or he's being consumed by his own tooth. The answer is that the PlayStation 4 still uses A-Track for most of its internal PS4. Yeah, I didn't realise that, but there you go. Sony never wanted to stop using something until absolutely everybody else has. So yeah, we've covered off all of those things, and it's the beauty of doing things for the web is that if you feel I've missed something, you can berate me for it, and I will do my best to add it, and we can update it as things progress and things go, and we can hopefully use it as a reference piece at the base of audio reviews, that if I can list off what I was happened to be using to test a piece of equipment, and you can then go, oh, well, what does he mean by that? Because for example, I mean, the people who actually read the stuff I do, I have been making a slow move from encoding stuff that I rip or buy from FLAC, free lossless audio codec, to AIFF files, which is like, if you like, WAV for Macs, because they are uncompressed. They're a bit bigger, but storage is not really an issue these days, and they just sound a little bit better. But if you were wondering, well, why is there a mix of FLAC and AIF, and what does that actually mean, you can have a look at the glossary, and all will be explained. It's possibly not the most, I've got some cracking review stuff coming through this month of things. I've been reviewing a speaker which looks like no other, and was writing about that yesterday. So this is perhaps a more workmanlike piece, but I'm hoping that it's something that people will find useful for years to come, because it can be updated in the ensuing period to remain relevant and hopefully useful for people.
Good stuff, Ed, and it is quite thorough. So yeah. Go and have a look at it. It should be on the website when you listen to this podcast this week. So that's it.
And then just to be clear, obviously Phil's been asking me to do a couple of these short pieces, and because obviously I live for a quiet life, and I don't like any form of controversy at all, I've just written him a piece on cabling, and I can't possibly see what's going to go wrong with that. So
that's going to be good.
I shall be putting my tin hat on for that.
That's definitely a subject for the last podcast before the Christmas break. Definitely.
I'm definitely bloody drinking for that then.
Right, so that's it for Hardware News. We'll be back in a sec with movie news and reviews. Okay, so movie review time. I haven't had time to go to the cinema. In fact, I'm thinking about getting rid of my card and saving some money over the winter months, and maybe get it back again for next summer. Because I'm looking at what's coming out, Steve, and there's not a hell of a lot that really interests me over the festive period. I mean, normally this time of the year, or certainly what has happened in the last few years, is we've had Star Wars films to go and get angry about.
Thank God we haven't got to worry about that this year then.
But no, we don't have that to go and do. So I might get rid of the card. That's my thinking anyway, and save some money. I need to decide that in the next week anyway.
Quite busy, I reckon.
For one tiny second, I thought you thought it was that I might get rid of the car. It's like you've only just ordered it. You haven't even got it yet. Stop.
No, card.
Yes, that's fine.
There's quite a bit coming out. I'm quite keen on seeing actually. Aquaman, Mary Poppins Returns, The Mortal Engines, Battle Angel Alita, or Alita Battle Angel, whichever way around it is. I thought about cancelling, but then I realised actually there's quite a bit I'll go and see.
Well, see, the other flip of the coin is Ed mentioned the car. I don't drive the car this time of the year. Not when it's icy or cold.
You can't drive the car.
It's simple Darwinism.
Yeah, this is the time of the year where on the Facebook groups you start seeing photographs of Mustangs ploughed into bus stops. And I'm not joking there. There's been 3 this week already that have crashed their cars in the cold weather. So there you go.
Look on the bright side. Well, actually, no. I suppose for the EcoBoost fraternity in that, the added problem is I didn't realise how much power you can gain with turbocharged cars when it's cold, because the volume of oxygen in a given intake period is increased because of air density. So the irony is that obviously my car's profoundly less powerful, but some back of an envelope calculations suggest that on overboost I have over 200 brake horsepower at just the point where you really probably don't want 200 brake horsepower.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll get back to the reviews. So cinema wise, that's what we're talking about, isn't it? Yeah. Fantastic Beasts. The second movie.
Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald or Wald, depending on who's pronouncing it.
This sounds boring as hell. It sounds like some kind of setup for a big franchise. Was it?
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing is, obviously you got the Potter books, wildly successful books and wildly successful films, and then they came to the end of the books. Kids are grown up, Voldemort's defeated, and they're making billions, and they're like, oh, we're chucking away a lot of money here. Can we not go back to the well for a bit more? And obviously, Rowling obliged by. I think Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is a textbook mentioned in the Potter books, maybe in the films too. And I know she did a little thin booklet thing for Comic Relief, a jokey thing that she called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them years ago. It was done for Comic Relief. But to take that very wishy-washy thing and then create an entire film franchise out of it was pushing your luck. I mean, so the first film was Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which introduced Newt Scamander, who was the author of the book. And she's kind of built this. It's set in the 20s, so it's set well before the Potter years, and it involves things that were mentioned in the Potter books and the films. The whole Grindelwald and his he's like an original dark wizard before Voldemort. Kind of parallels World War II, I guess, as well, the 30s and 40s and what happened then. And there's a big battle between him and Dumbledore. Ultimately, Dumbledore defeats him, and that's mentioned in the Potter books and films. So we already know that kind of backstory to degree. This is kind of going into it in more detail. I actually rewatched Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them yesterday before I went to the cinema, and I quite enjoyed it. Still, I found it was, I liked the characters she created. It was kind of funny and breezy, and it fitted in quite nicely. And it took place in America, so you got you saw a different aspect of the wizarding world. You saw the American view of it, and I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was nothing major, but it was fine. And then there's a big reveal at the end, which involves Grindelwald, and you think, oh, okay. This one takes all that stuff and moves it along, but it is quite dark and grim. There's very few laughs. The characters are all there, but because she adds more characters in, they kind of become less central. So the four main characters from the first film are kind of all there, but they're not really together in the same way. And it's you kind of feel like, I like those characters. I'd like to see them together more and doing things. And so it felt disjointed. Like she was trying to cram in so much backstory and all these different plots, and we got put a few twists in here, and we got to do this, we got to do that. That ended up being a bit of a chore. And I'm really not sure who it's made for, because it definitely ain't for kids. Kids are going to be bored stiff, and I'm not sure it's really whether adults want it either. It feels like what it is, which is squeezing a bit more cash out of this franchise. And there's typically 3 more films coming. She's planning, and yeah, it just felt disappointing. It was just a bit boring, a bit convoluted, and dark, and yeah, it lacked any kind. Well, I'll tell you what, it lacked any magic. It's just ironic.
That's truly ironic.
Yeah, it just didn't have any magic to it. It needed a few more laughs, a bit more breezy. It just felt overly serious, and yeah, and it ultimately felt like what it was. It's kind of like a bit of a cash grab. I'd say 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10 is a fair score.
So is that disappointment because you liked the kind of Harry Potter books and films? Is this the kind of thing that someone who wasn't interested in that might be able to kind of get something out of?
If you weren't interested in the Potter films, you definitely aren't going to be interested in this. I think if you're a Potter fan, there's a lot of little things here and there you'll pick up on. Like, oh, that and that and that. There's lots of Easter eggs and plot points and callbacks to things that if you know Potter well. Because I mean, there is a couple of scenes at Hogwarts. So this time they actually got a Dumbledore's in the film, played by Jude Law. So obviously a younger version of Michael Gambon. I don't think so. I wish Gambon wishes he looked like Jude Law. Yeah. So if you're a Potter fan, you might pick up on lots of little nods here and there to various things and backstories and this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not a particularly rewarding experience. I don't think the plot's very interesting. I don't think the reveals at the end are a bit silly. And there's too much, there's too much like CGI battles and that stuff where you just get a bit bored, because ultimately you're not really invested in the characters enough to care what happens to them. And so yeah, it just felt like the whole thing really. It kind of feels a bit unnecessary. Maybe it will get better. It hasn't done. I mean, I've got to say the cinema was nearly empty last night, which is not a good sign. So how it does at the box office, I guess will dictate what happens with the next film. They're kind of committed now when they're talking about doing 5 in total, leading up to 1945 and Dumbledore's big battle with Grindelwald. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, if she's going to do a third one, She needs, and it's all her fault. She wrote the screenplay. It's just completely down to Rowling. She needs to make it more. She needs to add a bit more humour back in there, and the plot needs to be a bit tighter, and she needs to keep the characters more focused, because there's just too many characters at the moment,
right?
And you kind of like you lose focus on who you're meant to be rooting for at the end of the day. Yeah,
sounds a bit like the prequels, Steve.
If you want to make comparisons, the Hobbit films and the Star Wars prequels, both of them, they are basically, this is what the Potter version of that.
Yeah. It's just kind of what it sounded like to me. I mean, I haven't seen the first film, so
it's well made. It's a well made film, you know. But and like I said, we watched the original film, which again is a great disc. You know, it looks fantastic and sounds fantastic on 4K in a Dolby Atmos. So you know, it's well a competently made movie, and it's got a great cast. Actually, I think Jude Law is very good as a younger Dumbledore. I still find Eddie Redmayne's character really
young relative with Jude Law these days.
Yes. I'm not really sure how old Dumbledore is supposed to be, because this is set in the 1920s. Dumbledore's wandering around in the year 2000. So how bloody old is he? I mean, he must be. Hang on. If he was alive in 2000 and in 27, so that's 73 years. Plus he's in his 30s at this point. So he's over 100 years old in the Potter films. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, but he's a wizard as well. So
no. That's the other thing. Yeah. The other thing I find annoying about it is you can create a fantastical world. That's fine. But the trick to doing it successfully is you have to have an internal logic to it. You got to set up your rules, your internal logic, and you got to stick to them. But it seems to me that the 1 minute they're putting on, you know, they've got magical ironing clothes, and then they're just clicking their fingers and clothes are appearing. So, well, if you got magic, you can do anything. Like just build something. Why do the Weasleys live in a crappy house when they can just click their fingers and have a nice big mansion built out of nothing? Magic's always a tricky one, because where are the limits? You know, what are the rules? What are the ground rules? What are the limits? What can you do? What can't you do? And you always feel like, you know, and also there's time travel too, because in the third Potter film, you've got time travel. Once you've got time travel thrown in there, all bets are off, aren't they? You can do whatever you like. So I think she's not very good at keeping consistent with her internal rules, which doesn't help.
Yeah, but she's a billionaire.
Oh yeah, clearly she knows more than I do. Richer than the Queen.
Okay, so 6 out of 10 for that one. Films opening this week, Steve.
This week we've got Ralph Breaks the Internet. So Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet. I've got to say, I don't know about anybody else, but I really enjoyed Wreck-It Ralph.
So did I.
I loved it.
I really did, yeah.
So I'm quite looking forward to this.
I was even prepared to tolerate Selva Silverman's annoying voice.
Yes. Well, she's playing like an annoying character, so.
Well, I know. Yes, and she's doing exactly to type, but it's a nails down a blackboard level of irritation. That voice.
Yes, so that's out this Friday. They open on Friday. So unfortunately, we won't have time to see it for next week's podcast. But I'm definitely going to go and see it. I'm looking forward to that. I really enjoyed Wreck-It Ralph. Thought it was very funny, very charming, and it was like shoehorned in lots of in jokes about gaming, which I think if you're a game, you know, if you've ever played any kind of video games over the last 30 years, you'll really appreciate. So I'm quite looking forward to that one. Obviously, the basic premise is that he gets out of the game and into the internet and finds out the whole world out there. So lots of gags about, you know, Twitter and Amazon and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, looking forward to that. And the other thing coming out, which I'm also looking forward to, is Creed 2. Creed, for those who don't know, it was essentially a Rocky film about the son of Apollo Creed and Rocky training him and everything, which was really, really good.
How many training montages did it have?
Well, not as many as Rocky 4, if you've obviously watched Rocky. But yeah, so Creed came out of nowhere, and I remember thinking, like, what a stupid idea for a film. But and I went to see it, and I loved it. It was really good.
Isn't this another film, though, with temporal issues all of its own? Because Apollo Creed is massive spoilers if you haven't seen a 30-something-year-old film. It's killed by Ivan.
What year did he die in? 1985 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. So let's assume, let's give them every benefit of the doubt, and that his missus was pregnant with this guy in 1985. He's still 33.
He's not 33. Yeah, it's pushing it a little bit. Anyway, but the concept is this Michael B. Jordan's character. What's his name? Something Creed, obviously. Can't remember, Dolphus Creed or something like that. He's a boxer too, and I really enjoyed the first film because Rocky's got cancer, his wife's dead. There's kind of a sad quality to the character, and training his friend's son, helped bring him back. And so in this one, and this was what was brought up brilliantly in the trailer, because you sort of see all this stuff about, he's going to fight this guy going to kill you, you can't fight him, your dad died, and it turns out to be Drago's son, the guy that Dolph Lundgren played in Rocky, who killed Apollo Creed in the ring, and he's fighting Drago's son. So yeah, I'm up for it.
Just for reference, Michael B. Jordan is 31.
So
he's born in 87.
Yeah.
So
unless Mrs. Creed was an elephant, there's still some issues here.
Well, but what year is it set in there? They didn't actually say. So
yeah.
Could be 2006.
You can tell when Withers likes a film, because unlike Fantastic Beasts, where he's just got, that a man
mental
steeped
gymnastics
in magic can't be over 100 years old. This one, he's desperately trying to make work because he likes it. Biased git.
Yeah, he just likes men in the ring.
Yeah, so that's what's out this week.
Okay. Blu-ray releases, have you got these right?
Out on Monday, or today the podcast is going up. We've got Hotel Artemis on Blu-ray. I confuse this film with, was it Bad Times at the Hotel Royale or something? Bad Times at the El Royale, because it seems like a similar kind of concept. This is like a hotel where various killers go, and it's run by Jodie Foster. Didn't get great reviews, but that's out. Also out on Blu-ray is Hackers.
Is this Hackers from the early 90s?
Oh yeah, this is the one with Johnny Lee Miller and Angelina Jolie in her first big film.
I remember skiving work to go and see this, and thinking,
have you
why?
Seen it since?
No, I've never seen it since. Yeah.
It has not aged well.
No, I didn't think it would.
Yeah, like anything to do with computers in the 90s, it was cobblers then, but it looks like real cobblers now.
But you just need to find the back door. That's what you got to find.
Which everything had, apparently. I watched a thing with on Red Letter Media. They do a review thing where they rewatch a film and talk about it, and they did Hackers, and it's quite funny to watch because it has not aged well. Also out, Night of the Demon, which is a cracking horror film from the mid-50s, based on Casting the Runes, I think, by J.R. James, is it? But great film. That's the one that Kate Bush samples on Hounds of Love. It's in the trees. But it's about a guy who he's a debunker, and he gets cursed. That's a good film. That's out. Also, Gosford Park's out, which was written by Julian Fellows, who did Downton Abbey, and directed by Robert Altman. Also, Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, unfortunately. And slightly better, we've got Prince of Darkness on Blu-ray, and also Escape from New York on Blu-ray. These have been remastered in 4K, which means we also get, bizarrely, we get Escape from New York's coming out on Monday. Prince of Darkness actually came out on 4K disc a couple of weeks ago, exclusively via Savvy. So if you want to get the version, you have to buy it from Savvy. It's a steelbook. But Escape from New York's was coming out on Monday. That's a big set with a soundtrack album, loads of extras, and I've got that on order. So I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Simon's already reviewed that one.
Yeah, Simon's already reviewed it, and it's really good.
We've got great artwork for the covers as well.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't do a big box set for Prince of Darkness. It's a bit disappointing, but the steelbook version of Zavvi does come with a documentary and lots of extras, so that's worth checking out. Also out on 4K disc, Philadelphia, and also Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again.
Is that Tom Hanks' Philadelphia?
The Tom Hanks Philadelphia, yes, not the Philadelphia Experiment, but Philadelphia. Yes, the one with Tom Hanks.
There's a mashup to end all mashups somewhere in there, isn't there?
So of those, I am Escape from New York. I'm definitely getting.
Okay, good stuff. I haven't bought any discs recently. Again, there doesn't seem to be much there. Oh, I'm going to go and get Braveheart. That's what I was going to go and do. Go and order that. Right.
I watched Outlaw King on Netflix last weekend.
Any good?
All right. I mean, certainly a bit more historically accurate than Braveheart was.
Yeah.
What are the accents like? That's the important
all over
thing.
the shop.
Yeah, I did notice.
I
did notice the Bannock Burn thing was on BBC Four again this week.
Yeah.
Did you see that Netflix changed itself to promote it? Was doing itself as Netflix Scotland with various bits and bobs. It was quite funny. I sent it to Phil last night. If you're ever bored, the Scottish People Twitter subreddit is just gold. You can easily pass 10 minutes of lunacy there.
Yeah. Not office friendly though.
Oh, is it not? So a bit sweary.
Well, it depends. Well, it's got Scottish people in it. What do you expect? Sorry, that's a massive stereotype. Yeah.
No, I was going to say I also watched the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. which is the new Coen Brothers film, which is also only on Netflix. And actually, no, I think it did get a small cinema release as well.
Any good?
Mainly, yes, really good. Particularly the first two stories. It's 5 stories told, as a sort of like a portmanteau, I suppose, or like it's like a book, and there's various tales of the West. But the first 2 are really funny. And then actually, no, there's 6 stories. Sorry, 6 stories later. But the first 2 are really funny, and there's a couple others that are really good too. A couple that aren't quite so strong. But overall, yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it looked and sounded really good too.
Good stuff. Right, so that's everything that is coming out. I just got a Skype thingy come over there.
Yeah, well, you saw it last night, but I've sent it to the other people.
All right.
Ed, I'm busy enough. I don't need you. I'm never bored, and I've never got free time, so stop giving me stuff to look at.
Oh, look at the old person complain. There's too much stimulation.
Right, so that's all the disc stuff. No, we're not going to post a link to that in the podcast thread. We'd get ourselves banned from our own website if we did that. Anyway, we need to cover some sad news. Stanley, the great Stanley, passed away while we were off last week. He didn't do it deliberately. We just happened not to have a podcast around at the time. Not Spike Lee, as somebody said.
Yeah, someone got that, didn't they? Spike Lee's dead. Was it the BBC, or it was one of the news services?
It was one of the news services. It came up on Twitter as Spike Lee. I think, Christ, Stanley and Spike Lee on the same day. I've got to say, other than his cameos, and I know he was behind the comic book characters and he created loads of them, household names and all the rest of it, I didn't know that much about him, because it wasn't my genre. It's not something I've particularly been interested in or followed very closely at all. But I do know that he's very well thought of, very highly respected. He created, Spider-Man, X-Men, blah 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 blah. You could go on and on and on and on.
Yeah, basically it's a 10-year period between about 1960 and 1970 where he basically created pretty much everything. It was like one of the greatest bursts of creative bursts of creativity ever, I think. But he actually did very little after that. It was kind of like it was all in that sort of 10-year period, and then he coasted off the reputation after that. Really, not that I'm taking anything away from the man, just saying that it was in a quite surprisingly short period of time.
Did he ever make any money out of it though? Because
not in the end, because Marvel went bust, didn't they, in the 80s? They went bankrupt.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them, obviously, they're making a flipping fortune now, but I don't know if Stan saw much of it. Because
I always had that thought that he was a very, very clever, and I know I picked that story up somewhere that obviously Disney are absolutely coining it in with a lot of his creations, but he didn't get a hell of a lot from that, which seems a bit sad, really.
Yeah.
He doesn't appear to have been on the breadline.
No, I think
certainly in the latter years. I mean, I do take what you're saying, and it is far too common in these situations that the actual creative forces don't necessarily see the rewards that their creations deserve. But I don't think he's the most profound example of this happening.
No, Ken Loach isn't making a film about him. Put it that way.
Yeah, it's but no, and the good news is that he shot a whole bunch of cameos, didn't he? Because he was in his 90s, they thought we better shoot a whole bunch of cameos with Stan in one session, so that we've got them for future films. So even though he's sadly passed away now, we will still see Stan Lee cameos in at least the Marvel films coming out next year: Captain Marvel, Avengers 4, and Spider-Man. So there'll be some more Stan Lee cameos to come. So gone but not forgotten, or even missed.
Yeah. I was going to say, you're a big Spider-Man fan, aren't you, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of, I think to a certain extent, it's kind of crowning creation.
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, Spider-Man is the Marvel character, isn't he? Really. I mean, yes, they've got the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, but for me as a kid, Spider-Man was my favourite. And
I always get confused with Spider-Man. You, Steve, if you're versed in this, has he always been a whiny bitch, or is that something that the film was?
He was meant to be a cocky kid.
Yeah, Stan Lee's kind of era was the 60s, and it was very much comic books of the time were quite kind of simplistic morality tales.
Yeah, X-Men's basically about racism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So everything around that time was, it was very kind of black and white. Though, there was some certain subversive elements, but then it kind of evolved towards the 70s when you start to get the darker characters in Marvel, the Punisher and Wolverine and stuff like that. But very much the foundations were in Stan Lee's era. And, you know, kind of, if you look at Fantastic Four, there's not a great deal of depth to those characters and everything, but we're working with kind of artists like Steve Ditko with Spider-Man. He did kind of create the template for what you'd view kind of aesthetically as a superhero, you know, even if the writing went on to evolve and kind of almost kind of outstrip his achievements in that sphere. It very much, he kind of built that template of what we now see as the superhero.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. The classic superhero template that we would be familiar with now is very much the Marvel template, the Stan Lee template. If you look at the DC stuff, like Wonder Woman, for example, you know, she's an Amazonian goddess. It's a very different kind of backstory for a lot of their characters. Superman being the classic example, you know, an alien from another planet, rather than somebody who is normal but somehow, you know, is given special powers via whatever, a radioactive spider bite or something like that, or he builds a special suit because he's clever and a billionaire. I guess Batman is the only example of that with more of the sort of Marvel style backstory. But a lot of the DC stuff has their origins in things like classic myth.
Yeah, and a lot of the kind of Marvel ones, it was, as you say, with like Peter Parker bitten by the spider, it was very much a case of cursed by the powers, as opposed to, you know, this extraterrestrial being who comes down and then just kind of, you know, is completely invulnerable and slightly boring because of it. You know, it was very much about kind of
Superman is preposterously dull.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are a Superman fan, I apologize, but just the whole, essentially, if you, from the outset, if you basically remove the element of risk to the main character to the point where you then have to tortuously try and work things back in, it's like, yeah, you kind of screwed that up at the initial brief, you know, sauce balls. But
yeah, I mean, they did a bit of that in Marvel because they had like Thor, you know, who's a Norse god basically, but most of it's kind of like Mark said, it's a reaction to the time. So civil rights in the 60s, X-Men, everyone starts dropping acid. Late 60s, you get Doctor Strange. I have to say, I did that. You know, I'm choosing my words carefully. That Doctor Strange in so many ways appeals to me. But I just like it does strike me, to an extent, that's people letting their hair down. And sort of, if you like, taking a step back from normally a slightly more rigorous universe creation. I mean, not to say that there isn't some level of thought that's gone into it, but it is more like, yeah, some of this is just magic. Live with it. But yeah, and tying in with Stan Lee's death, why has no one seemed to mention the fact that the new Attorney General of the United States, Matthew Whitaker, is the spitting image of the Kingpin, who's a villain from Spider-Man and Daredevil? If you don't believe me, look up the Kingpin and tell me that isn't the same guy. That we have a Marvel villain now heading up the judiciary in America.
Yeah, interestingly,
strange things have happened.
Very, very quickly, because we need to be wrapping things up. But as well as Stan Lee, there was also William Goldman, who passed away. Steve, tell us who he was, because I'd never heard of him before.
Really? No. Never heard of William Goldman, Oscar-winning screenwriter who wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, among many others.
The greatest end line in any film, as far as I'm concerned. For a moment there, I thought we were in trouble.
Right. Oh, it's got the best beginning too. Most of what follows is true.
Yeah.
Yes, he wrote. Well, he wrote Marathon Man, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. He wrote one of my favourite films of all time, The Princess Bride, both the book and the screenplay. He also wrote a book called Adventures in the Screenplay about his experiences, but he came up with the very famous line, "In Hollywood, nobody knows anything." And yeah, his glory days were a while ago, but yeah, he was a really great screenwriter, and if you haven't read Adventures in the Screen Trade, it is worth getting, because it is a great read. It's very interesting, quite often very funny. It gives you a real insight into how Hollywood works. He's quite bitter in it, because I think by that point his career was kind of on, you know, he'd had his glory days were behind him, but it's definitely worth checking out. He wrote another book called Hype and Glory, which was about the Cannes Film Festival, which is worth seeing as well. And I think one called Further Adventures in the Screen Trade, again about the later part of his career. But yes, he was a very talented screenwriter, talented guy, and he I mean, if you, whatever else you might say, you know, Marathon Man, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, and The Princess Bride. And he also wrote The Bridge Too Far. I'll take any of those. You know, if I'd written one of those, I'd be very happy. So obviously, like Stan, he was getting on a bit, but he was only in his 80s. He wasn't that old. But yes, William Goldman sadly also passed away.
Can I just say, I've just looked up Matthew Whitaker, and you are right. It is Kingpin. I'm just assuming now we've got to get a radioactive spider to bite Bernie Sanders.
Good stuff. It's pointless talking about Black Friday because it is today, and obviously we're recording today. And
if I get one more email about Black Friday, I'm going to go ballistic.
Well, I've just been having a quick look just to see what TV bargains are out there, and to be honest with you, there's not a hell of a lot. There doesn't seem to be that big a discounting going on. I mean, the best price I've found so far for an OLED I would go and buy is the FZ802 from Panasonic at $1499.
Is that what size is that?
That's 55-inch.
I've seen the 55. I'm pretty sure I've seen it at $12.99.
Right. $12.99 is the B8.
You get the B8 for that, yeah.
No. I'm talking about the Panasonic.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. But anyway,
we're going to try and Black Friday each other.
Well, you might get better. Actually, Cyber Monday is when the podcast goes out, so have a look, people, because you might actually get a better deal on a TV on Cyber Monday than Black Friday. But
on mobile phones,
makes sense to me.
If you're buying if you're looking to buy straight buy a mobile phone, a number of manufacturers off their direct sale websites do very good deals on Cyber Monday. Obviously, Motorola is not the most fashionable manufacturer, but they do make some really quite solid Android phones, and they usually have an excellent Cyber Monday promotion, so that's well worth a look.
Yeah.
What model Panasonic was it you were looking at, Phil?
The FZ802.
Yeah, RGB Direct are doing it for $12.99 right now.
That's a pretty good price.
That's fantastic money, actually, for a Panasonic, if you want accurate images and so on. Plus, I wouldn't go for the 952 with the soundbar because I didn't actually think the soundbar was that great. Certainly not worth the £500 difference. So
definitely not.
So yeah, 802. But anyway, that might be irrelevant come Monday. But then it is Cyber Monday, so there might be some deals out there. So there you go. And on that bombshell, that is it for the podcast this week. My thanks to Steve Withers.
And when was the last time you were tested for HIV?
Mark Botwright.
I'm mentally incompetent and can't manage daily life.
And Ed Selley.
Bring your drink, leave my knife.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Bookmark AVForums for latest reviews, news and videos. Actually, you can now follow us on Instagram as well, at AVForums. Go see us there.
No nudes, we promise.
Yeah, we promise. Also, no, we promise. Plus, why not leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.